Rossman. The kitty is over here, and you unfortunately can't see the kitty completely because I'm bad at camera angles. And I promise you, if you subscribe to this video, if you subscribe to this channel after watching the video, that I will make the kitty available. What I'm doing here is kind of fucked up, because what I'm doing is I'm taking something that you used to be used to having as part of the channel experience, and I'm telling you that you have to subscribe if you want to get it back. Do you know who's also doing that? BMW. Check this out. They are offering, I'm not kidding here, they're offering what looks kind of like a subscription for lights. No, really. This is called High Beam Assistant over here. And when you take a look at it, what they are advertising, and they're actually bragging about this, is a feature that you can literally get on cars that cost in the $20,000 range. So the high beams are on, it detects that there's a car that is oncoming, and it turns the high beams off, and then it immediately turns the high beams back on. The fact that they are even like excited about this is the thing that just, that blows my mind. You know, we talk a lot on this channel about some of the scummy stuff that I believe Tesla does, and a lot of the people in my audience agree. Even Tesla, to give them credit, on their lowest end vehicle, the cheapest car that they sell, this comes standard. And Tesla's cheapest vehicle, on average, costs considerably less than the vehicles that most people from BMW are purchasing before they add this functionality to it. And as you can see over here, technically you do have the ability to buy it permanently for 200 pounds, but that's not the point here. The point is that this is attempting to normalize that which I do not believe should be normalized. This vehicle has everything within the vehicle to be able to do this, but they're telling you, we'll give you a trial of this feature in the car. We'll give you a trial of auto high beams. Can you imagine buying a car back in the day when they had, you know, like you had to do this to open the window, and then eventually they had motors with little buttons and them saying you would have to pay $10 for a 1-month trial or subscription to the ability to do that when that's already built into the car? I don't like the fact that this is something that's even being normalized. I appreciate that they at least offer you the option to buy it so that you could, quote, own it, end quote. Some of these features do have the car connect to the internet to figure out whether you actually purchased that particular feature with the vehicle. For a long period of time, Tesla was not allowing you to transfer full self-driving from one vehicle to another. And the way that they would understand this is when you transferred ownership of the vehicle because it was connecting to their server. Reason was not allowing older versions of the software that people purchased a perpetual license to be activated again. And they literally told customers that paid full price for that software that they were being unreasonable by asking to be able to activate that software. And Adobe has taken part in similar practices. Who's to say BMW wouldn't do something different? Who's to say that any of these car manufacturers wouldn't do something different? This whole idea of paying to unlock stuff that's already built into your vehicle is something that's getting considerably worse with each passing year. And again, the issue with a lot of these features is that they do in many cases require that the vehicle connect to the internet. Now, there are many people that say, listen, you don't need this feature anyway. Can't you just turn on and turn off your own high beams? No, you can't. The levers on a BMW don't work. They don't. Have you ever driven on the road and seen somebody use the lever on that vehicle? Either one of two things is true. A, 100% of the owners of BMW vehicles do not know how to use the levers, or B, they don't work. I'm going to take the charitable position and choose B. What have I said this whole time? Blame the manufacturer, not the user. In all seriousness though, the levers on a BMW are as untouched as I am when I show up to a date and I talk about PP Bus G3 Hot. All jokes aside, yes, you can turn off and turn on your high beams yourself. You're missing the point. As we argue with each other over, I have personal responsibility, I do it myself, and the other people say, this is a safety feature, this is a safety feature that affects somebody else. If it's already built in the car and you already have the safety feature, to not have that safety feature there is almost like having anti-lock brakes or airbags and saying you have to pay extra for them. Those people are arguing with each other. Both of those people have points. Simultaneously, that argument takes away from the point. Technology used to get better universally. It did not just get better in terms of you have this feature you didn't before, but we're gonna deliver it to you in this way that technological advancement has never been delivered to you before. When we went from the black and white television to the color television, I did not have to log into the television and uncheck a box called "Do not sell my personal information." This was something I wanted to discuss in a second video, but I really don't see how to disconnect the two because it comes up very often. Many people will say, okay, fine. Even in spite of all these things that you bring up, Lewis, stuff's still better now than it was 30 or 50 or 70 years ago. And I think that when people say that, they're taking the Steven Pinker Enlightenment Now take. If you've read that book and other books like it, they make the argument that we are actually better off as a species in all these objective metrics than we were 30, 70, 100, 200 years ago. And I do agree with Steven Pinker's Enlightenment Now. It's a fairly good book, and it does go over these things. And if you talk about it, technically, the Adobe software that I'm talking about over here, the new Adobe software, even if you're dealing with subscriptions and all this other BS and their horrible EULAs, it's still better than your average video editing software that you had to deal with 25 or 30 years ago. The same is true with a lot of the other stuff that we're dealing with. I mean, 30 years ago, you didn't even have this feature in a car to be able to complain about to begin with. So why are you mad? And that's a great point. I think what people who make that point are missing is the difference between how things used to improve and how they improve now. And that's the part that I want to bring up because it didn't have to be this way. Back in the day, when technology improved, you were not giving up something in order to get something. When we went from having a UNIVAC to having a 286, you were not giving up your freedom to use this device in any way, shape, or form. It was an upgrade in every single way, not just in the technology, but also in the usability of that technology and the user experience you got when using that technology. Nowadays, it's not the same. When we transferred over from this computer over to this computer, you had the ability to have something that's massively more powerful. It fits in my pocket. I can interface with it in a way that I wasn't able to interface with this. I have the internet and high speed anywhere that I go. I don't have to be attached to Wi-Fi or plug an Ethernet cord into it. This is better in almost all these ways. However, there was a downgrade in terms of freedom. On this device, I can install any operating system of my choice. I can install whatever I wanted. On this, the bootloader is locked and it only allows me to install an operating system that the manufacturer allows me to install. If you were to purchase an MSI, a Gigabyte, or an Asus motherboard, and any one of those brands told you you can only install Windows 11, you cannot install Windows 7, you cannot install Linux, you cannot install BSD, you can only install the operating system that we allow, people would scream bloody murder, and that company would likely go bankrupt very quickly as a result of that anti-freedom design. However, when the paradigm shifted to something newer, we have decided to accept that downgrade in freedom. And this downgrade in freedom is something we see all over the place. You used to buy software and actually own the software. Now you can purchase software and literally have it taken away from you after you have paid in full. Everything is now a subscription. Everything is something where it's not only a subscription, but access to that can be taken away from you when the company decides that they are going to stop giving you access to it. This has gotten so crazy that people who spend $400 on a baby monitor, as I've talked about in another video on my channel, can wind up losing access to these features and then have to subscribe to get access to their features in their baby monitor. Now, again, to be clear, the baby monitors of 40 years ago did not have any of the features that they're asking you to subscribe to here. So isn't that better? I would argue that it's not, because the way progress used to work is it was a complete step forward. It was always a 100% step forward. When you went from black and white televisions to color televisions, you did not give up any freedom in doing so. When you went from having a Studer A800 to having a Sony 3348, you were not giving up any freedom in moving to that machine. You didn't give up freedom in order to get new technology. Nowadays, we release new technology, but when we release that new technology, we try to get people used to giving up a little bit of freedom, giving up a little bit of ownership with each passing day. And we justify that by saying, well, it's better than the last generation. Well, it's 20 years ago, you could not turn on the air conditioner in your car by clicking a button on your phone. You just had to get into the car and deal with the fact that it was boiling hot. True. At the same time, as technology has gotten better, I can go on my phone right now and I can use this application called Home Assistant and I can change the temperature that my AC is set to. I can do this from anywhere. I don't have to subscribe to anything. I am able to do this via a local API with my Venstar thermostat. I don't even allow this shit to go online. My Venstar thermostat, as well as my Home Assistant virtual machine, are literally blocked from connecting to the internet. They're not even allowed to connect to anything on my network besides the on one VPN client or WireGuard client that I allow. This is not even on the internet. I have the freedom to be able to do that. Back in the day, when technology was introduced that would improve your life, it would be introduced in a way where there were no downgrades. And the point that I want to bring up on this channel is when new technology is released nowadays, it's released in a manner where you are downgrading the experience, the freedom that you have to be able to do what you want with what you own in a way that you just didn't have to deal with before. Even when I talk about things with Apple, when I talk about a lot of the right to repair stuff, this is a point that I was trying to bring up in a video that I did on Marques Brownlee's interview with this person who worked at Apple, where the gentleman that works at Apple was trying to talk about all the ways within which repairability is sometimes at odds with durability and progress. Some of the things that they do have absolutely nothing to do with durability whatsoever. There's no compromise there, yet we accept it. 10 years ago, I was able to buy a lot of the chips that I needed to do my job. Nowadays, Apple utilizes chips on the board created by companies like Intersil and Texas Instruments that I'm not able to get access to because they're told that they're not allowed to sell to me. How does that affect durability? How does that affect the user experience of the device? How does that affect security, denying me the ability to purchase a charging IC? It doesn't. We accept that there is this upgrade because the device lasts way longer. An M1 MacBook is something that doesn't even need a fan, and it's insanely powerful in contrast to machines of yesteryear, where if you had a fanless device that was small and compact, it was essentially a word processor if you were lucky. There are many ways that technology has leaped forwards, but there's always this step backwards, and you don't have the quality of the technology and the functionality going up along with freedom. You have the technology and the functionality go up, but the freedom goes down. When many people make this argument about technology getting better, they tend to only look at the technological specifications, the features and the functionality of the device. They don't look at the other metric, freedom. These two used to go up together. They don't, or at the very least, the freedom would stay static as the technology got better. And I think that it is important to realize and recognize that this was the norm for hundreds upon hundreds of years. Why are we accepting the loss of it now? And to be clear, when I talk about that, I'm not referring to the fact that as technology gets smaller, it's more difficult to repair. I'm not talking about the fact that a micro BGA is more difficult to solder than a QFN, or that soldering a QFN is more difficult than replacing an inverter board, which I can physically do with my hands without requiring a microscope or a soldering iron. I'm not talking about the fact that as devices become more advanced, they're more difficult to repair as a result of them being more complex. That's fair game, and that's not something that anybody has ever seriously complained about with regards to talking about legislation against manufacturers being able to manufacture devices that are more advanced. That's not something we've ever asked for. What we're talking about are the days when those old devices were devices that we were able to purchase, and these modern ones are ones we have to fucking scavenge AliExpress and eBay to find them, because hell if Texas Instruments is ever going to sell that stuff to us. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the loss in availability. We're talking about the loss in the ability to repair what you own, even if you had all the equipment and capability to do it. I don't think that we should accept it simply because the technology is getting better. I don't care if somebody brings up that my dad's Oldsmobile Delta 88 from 1989, you know, the year where the blue paint would kind of chip off, so you like after a few years you have like a half blue, half silver car. Love that stuff. That car did not have this feature, but just because that car didn't have this feature doesn't mean that it is wrong to acknowledge that back then when progress was made, that progress was made in every area. You had increased freedom and you had increased functionality. These two went up together. That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now.